Hello and welcome to Awakening the Feminine Divine, an online gathering where sacred space has been created to honor the Great Mother Goddess, to explore the concept of the divine feminine and all her interpretations, and for us to dive deeply into the essence of women's spirituality in order to bring about much needed healing. When a woman heals herself, not only is she able to break the cycles of pain and transform her own life, but she can further empower generations to come and also to live more differently. My name is Frances Billinghurst, your host for and the creatrix of this gathering, and I'm coming to you from Ghana country here in South Australia. As such, I acknowledge the Ghana people of the Adelaide Plains as being the traditional custodians of these lands upon which I reside. So Manina Padme, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I am delighted to welcome Rachel Roberts. Hello, Rachel. Thank you for being part of this gathering.
Oh, thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be here again.
Its honor is also ours. So for anyone who is not familiar with the work that Rachel does, she is the author of, the best-selling author, I should say, of Lupa, She-Wolf of Rome, Mother of Destiny, as well as Wolf, Embody Your Inner Wolf, Pantheon, the Romans, and Flora, Goddess of Flowers. And besides being a writer and a historian, Rachel is also a sacred dance teacher and an embodiment and flower essence coach. Her desire has always been to create a bridge between history and spirituality, mythology and well-being, and her work focuses on transmuting ancient mythology and symbols, or symbolism, I should say, into embodied wisdom, so that the past becomes a modern tool for healing, empowerment, and awakening, both for men as well as for women. Rachel is the creatrix of Wolf Woman Rising, an international online wisdom school where she empowers you to embody wisdom, reclaim your wild, untamed self, and create a life lived on purpose. And we are delighted that Rachel is here to us today with her presentation, Embodying Authenticity with Wolf and Flower Wisdom. So I'm just going to bring you onto the screen, Rachel. So thank you again. I can't speak this morning. So thank you once again for joining us for Awakening the Feminine Divine. And I thought we might just jump right in and have you explain to us why authenticity is so important for awakening the divine feminine, especially in this day and age, and how it can actually be a tool that can be used for spiritual growth and or connecting with the self.
Mm, yes, thank you, Lisa, for having me here. And I'm excited to share, about authenticity because for me, it's been one of my kind of biggest trials and also one of my kind of biggest gifts as well. It's been important on my path, hence why I love to talk about it. The reason being for me, growing up, I was probably kind of this first generation that was really social media was kind of like very present actually growing in my growing years. So that kind of comparison that I would always have to other people, other people I've never even met, hundreds of thousands of women all over the world to which I was being compared to and which I was comparing myself to. And within that, trying to find my own worth and value, well, what makes me special, like, and how am I lesser than or maybe better than these other people, trying to work that all in my head as a teenager and then as a young adult. And even still, we're still bombarded with that all the time, aren't we? Especially with social media, I find. Um, and so authenticity can be something that's really quite difficult to navigate, I think, but it's something that we very much crave, because we are an individual soul and we are an individual person. Um, and also when we're going through this comparison all the time, especially between women, I think, um, I can't say for the experience of men because I'm not a man, but especially, for women, this experience we have of comparing ourselves, to other people, we do lose ourselves a little bit, and we have this disconnect from ourselves. Like I said, we come into these questions of what is my worth, what is my value, and often we find it lacking, because what's put online is, a perfection, an ideal, that has been created, almost fake, especially with like AI and things like that, that are bringing forth this unreality, that we are comparing ourselves to, that we'd never match up to, because it isn't real, because it is fake. So authenticity is about coming back to ourselves, back to our truth, and having, I kind of see it as a process. We first come to a place of self-acceptance. That's what we're aiming for to begin with, a self-acceptance of what we do have, and then kind of taking that forward, and we kind of come into a place, hopefully, of self-admiration. And then that's, admiring the self. Once we kind of have accepted that self, we can then come to a place of admiring it, and then we move on to a place of devotion. And that devotion is that last stage that we can come to in this kind of three-part process, is what I take my students through and what I had to take myself through, that authenticity journey, kind of coming from acceptance, and then admirance,
Ration.
admiration. I like to make up words. And then finally coming to devotion, because once we admire that thing, we then can devote, devotional love to that thing. Because when we value something, that's when we really start to tend it, and we start to care for it. So that kind of that first stage, I think, can be probably, the most difficult for most women, is that self-acceptance. And this is where I've used kind of wolf wisdom and flower essences, for me, have been the way that I have kind of worked through that self-acceptance, and have been the tools that I've used, and hence they're the tools that I teach when when it comes to uh, going on this journey with authenticity. The end goal ultimately being kind of fulfillment, being fulfilled, living a life that actually lights you up, feeling joy and pleasure. We're here now living in this lifetime in this human body. So if we're disconnected from it, we're not living it authentically, we're not completely fulfilled. We're always going to feel something's lacking, or perhaps that we don't quite fit. I kind of always use the analogy of, trying to go about your day with perhaps, the wearing the t-shirt of a 6-year-old, I'm a woman with big breasts, that would be very uncomfortable, very, very tight, it doesn't quite fit. You can't quite move your arms. And that's what it's like to not be authentic. You can't quite fully express yourself. You're not quite itching your itches, you're not quite fulfilling and reaching those dreams, because you're not, going that way authentically.
No, thank you very much for sharing that. And you've made a number of points that just want to make a few comments before we go into the next stage. Yes, there is the impact of social media on everybody's lives. But as you said, you're probably a part of that generation where it's probably the bigger impact. In my generation, when I was growing up, it was all the women's magazines, the so-called empowerment magazines. But again, there was almost this artificial imagery of what the perfect woman is, always a size 8, size 10, and then she got down smaller and smaller, size 6. So if you didn't fit into that, you were already comparing yourself as not being acceptable or authentic, or your perception of authenticity was, as you said, external. And this is the important thing, as you said, we've got to come back to what connects in to our own being, which can be quite difficult in this modern age if all the tools that we have actually are external and we don't have those inner internal connections. So is this why, in the work that you do, that you mentioned wolf wisdom and the flower essence that you teach, that these are important tools to sort of bring us back, I'll say home, back to our own inner self? And if so, for people who aren't familiar with them, what exactly are they? And how can, I know this is a long question, and how can they be of benefit? And I'll stop there before I go on to my next question.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I, like I said about with this kind of this comparison, often we're comparing ourselves to that which is unreal. So this kind of make-believe fantasy that is being created, whether that be through AI or just be, this computer life. So to kind of the tools that are going to bring us back are going to be, of course, the opposite to that, because we remedy things with the opposite, the light and the shadow. Too much shadow, we need light. Too much light, we need to delve into the shadows. So it's that opposition that we're always kind of looking for. So if we're moving away from unreality, let's come back to reality. And what is real? This flesh that's beneath our hands, the grass that's beneath our feet, the flowers, the plants that we're eating and we're consuming, and also the example of the animal kingdom. So I'll start with the animal kingdom first, with wolf wisdom. So why that's been a really powerful tool for me. Um, so one of the ways that I was comparing myself and finding authenticity was around this idea of, um, women and girls being good, well behaved, quiet, obedient, kind of this idea that was very much coming from the generation before me. That idea of being brought up as a Christian, and not necessarily because of that, but because of being this obedient, quiet girl that was to be seen and not heard. And I very much had things to say, and they were always being kept bottled up and kept in. And I was questioning my voice, like, well, if it's not meant to be heard, maybe I'm not even supposed to think this. So when the more kind of I delved into this, the archetype and the animal that would come up for me as an animal companion, as a power animal, was the she wolf. And the she wolf was kind of offering me this example, that I could be ferocious, but at the same time, I could be gentle, that I could be, have this power and this strength, yet I still could be kind and compassionate. So it wasn't one extreme or the other, it wasn't just this or just that. It wasn't good or bad, or quiet or too loud. There was this harmony, this balance there that could be achieved. And then the she wolf kind of became my one of my power animals. And the more I looked into this, of course, Lupa, the she wolf of Rose, she came forth as one of my primary guides, and she taught me more about kind of about a purpose, about destiny, about how we are here for a reason. We have this lifetime and we have this body for a reason. So they're almost like a curriculum that we've chosen, maybe our soul, on its whole journey, our soul has a complete lesson that it wants to learn. And so maybe I kind of think about it, kind of deciding, before we get here with our guides and our guardians and the creator and our soul itself, thinking, okay, I need to learn this and this and this and this. And it's like choosing your choices for going to university. Okay, I need to learn this, I need to do this module, I need to do that module. And to be able to learn those particular lessons, you need to have a certain physicality. You need to have a certain personality. You need to be in a certain location. You need to go on certain experiences and journeys. And they're all enabling you to kind of to have this lesson over time. And this is all fitting in with our purpose and our destiny. So the way that we need to authentically kind of fulfill our destiny and how we also contribute to the universe as well, because there's a U shape in the universe that it only that you fit, nothing else can fit in that exact spot. There's only you that can fulfill that thing. And so they're often linked, kind of this fulfillment of self and having this soul purpose, this destiny. And Lupa kind of taught me this, through her story and her energy, and also the wolves as well. Their example of having a wolf pack. Every wolf in that pack contributes something different. Imagine if a whole pack was all puppies, so they were all alphas. well, it wouldn't work. I mean, the puppies would just end up having loads of fun, and there'd be nobody doing any organizing, all alphas, and well, who would lead and who would follow? So we all have this contribution that we're making to the pack of humanity, and that's completely unique to us. It's also perfect as well, and it reminds us how perfect we are. We're completely perfect. We are meant to be this way. Like, I couldn't do what I'm doing without the way that I sound, without my body the way it is, because it experienced things, in the way that I needed to experience them, the things I've had in life as well, all those experiences, have been, when I look back on them, some of them weren't great and some of them were scary and some were amazing, but they all kind of they seem to fit. They make sense actually when we look back with hindsight. Um, and flower essences, which is kind of the other tool that I use, is just affirmed this. So flowers are very much having this affirmation again of the rightness of you and the value of you. Look at every kind of single flower that's out there. Every single flower has a unique medicine, and it can be a medicine and it can also be a poison. And you don't get, I can't imagine, the rose is kind of sitting there, in the garden and going, oh, I so wish I was a dandelion, or the dandelion thinking, oh, I so wish I was a rose. No, they just get on with it and they contribute and they live their unique medicine. Without them, it's without dandelions, who would we have to help our kidneys? Without rose, who would we have to help kind of like cool down the fire? They're the unique medicines that they offer, and we're exactly the same. And so flowers can help us to appreciate our authenticity. Another analogy that flowers always make me think of is, if you were to go shopping and you were to have like 30 t-shirts in front of you, all different styles, different colors, and you were to try them all on, some of them would look ridiculous, some of them would look really stupid, some of them would look better, some would make you look amazing. Now, trying all of them on, you haven't changed. There's nothing different about you, between those like, in those 5 seconds when you were trying all those different clothes on. You didn't change, but the clothing did. And so, if that dandelion was trying to be that rose medicine, it wouldn't, if we tried to use a dandelion to help kind of cool our energy, it wouldn't work. We need rose for that. It has its own unique medicine. It has its own unique fit. That thing that is perfect, that it's contributing. And so we are the same. It never ceases to amaze me that there's a flower essence, which those that don't know is a high vibrational remedy. It's the soul of the plant. You know, every single one, they all have something that they contribute, something that is completely unique, that's just sat there waiting to help, to offer, to give. So no matter, who you are, your unique situation, or where you are, what you're doing, there is a flower that is your match. And again, it's about kind of finding that that perfect t-shirt, in the shop. Oh, excuse me.
Yes, yes. And just for our listeners, just like to make just a little notice, Rachel has actually been sick and we've been trying to do this interview for a little while. So we're going to get through there because this information that she's sharing is very important about coming back in this day and age, as Rachel has wisely mentioned, finding out who we are as an authentic being within our own selves. And again, with social media, with AI, that is becoming more and more confusing. We're becoming more and more disconnected from, as Rachel's talking about in this interview, the animal kingdoms, the flower kingdoms, and taking them for granted. So Rachel has just covered a little bit. So I'm just going to bring her back in because she was talking about the flower essence there. And I think this is something that we often don't connect in with unless we have this knowledge base like yourself of the essence of flowers. We see them merely as external gifts or symbols, or yeah, we take their external beauty or whatever, of maybe a rose more than a dandelion, but you're talking about the essences of them, which is taking us to a different level of connection with these plants. And I suppose in a way, it's making us more aware of all plants that we share this planet with and the higher vibration that they all share and what they can all teach us as well.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Like a lot of people kind of talk about this disconnection from nature. And I used to kind of feel like maybe we were disconnected from nature, but actually I don't think that's even possible anymore because I don't believe in a disconnect anymore because we can't disconnect because we are nature. What we can do is forget and neglect, but we can't disconnect because we are those flowers, we are the earth and the soil, you know, we come from that, you know, that when we consume, even just eating the foods, you know, you are what you eat, that saying, you know, that they literally, the food, the plants become your cells. So the plants are your physicality. They have become your cells. They've become your blood. You know, they've become your internal fluids. And then when we die, we then return to it, and we literally become the plants. We, you know, it's not like we just disappear. We go in the soil. We go into the roots. We come up into the flowers and the trees. So we can't disconnect, but we can neglect and forget, I think. So we
Mm.
return back to nature to remind ourselves.
Yes, and I think when in this day and age we need a lot of reminding on lots of levels as well. So how do we sort of weave this into the theme of our event is about awakening the feminine divine. So, and I know you've written a book about one goddess in particular, Flora, who is the goddess of flowers. And if my knowledge of mythology is correct, she's a Roman goddess. So how can she, and you also mentioned Lupa, who is one of the, I suppose, the matriarchal wolf mother of Rome. She was one of the founding mother of Rome. And please correct me if I'm not 100% correct. But how do these essences, these embodies, these energies, these vibrations help us awaken to the femininity within ourselves as well?
Yeah. So I think by accepting ourselves and acknowledging our authenticity is to acknowledge that we are the divine feminine. To honor ourselves and to honor our bodies is to honor the kind of the gifts that we've been given it by, you know, the divine feminine, by the creator. But it's also to acknowledge that you know, we have this aspect of ourselves that is divine, that is sacred, you know, um, kind of that awakening to the divine feminine, I would say, is kind of aligning with authenticity. So we're all going to awaken the divine feminine that is unique within us. So it looks different for every single person, you know. So the way that the divine feminine is embodied and manifest and the way that we connect to it is completely unique. And that's going to be based on our own uniqueness and our authenticity. So we can look at all of the different ways that, you know, that other people are connecting to the divine feminine, awakening that, embodying and living that. But we have to kind of come back to our own unique way of doing it. So like I said, every flower has its own way of growing, you know, of reaching towards the sun. So if the sun is the divine feminine and we are the plant that's awakening to that, we all have a different way of getting there. There are the vines that will go up the trees. There'll be small little flowers that go delicately and gently. Some are big and extravagant and bold, and they're reaching up towards the sun. You know, so we're going to find that our own unique way of awakening the divine feminine within us. It might be quiet and delicate and gentle. It might be bold and big like the sunflowers. You know, sometimes it might be sweet, you know, scented and beautiful like the rose, but also there's some thorns along the way. So it's just about embracing that kind of, that your own unique way of getting there, your own unique way of expression. So it's about coming back to ourself. Yeah, and you mentioned goddess Flora. So goddess Flora is the goddess of flowers. And her story goes like the ancient Roman mythology that she is the daughter of Tellus Mater, who is the Roman Mother Earth. That's what Tellus Mater literally means, Earth Mother. Um, and so, Tellus Mater was always there, but she had this daughter, Flora, who, brought all of the beauty to the land of the gods. And one day she had this glimpse of the earth that her mother had created, and the beings there were everything was grey. The beings were kind of a bit dull and a bit lifeless, and weren't feeling fulfilled, and were just a bit down in the dumps. And Flora was like, I need to do something about that. So she brought color into the world. She brought the flowers into the world. She brought beauty. And the humans then were able to experience pleasure and joy and delight and awe and wonder. And that's what brought life, into the world. It was literally that introduction of flowers, of flora coming to the human realm, and awakening all of those buds. And she does the same within us as well. She reminds us kind of, of the potential pleasure that we can have of being ourselves, the joy of being ourselves, and the joy of living as well. She brings us back into this place where we can feel this intimacy with the divine, in every single moment. So whether you're doing the washing up and you see a bubble in the sink, and you're just amazed by the beauty of that bubble and just the fact that it even exists. And then you have that childlike delight where you're popping the bubble. It makes that mundane, finding the divine in that mundane moment. So she is kind of a reminder of those moments. And I think she can help us to find that authenticity. So if you're thinking, I don't know how I'm authentic, I don't know what's unique or great about me, I'm just ordinary, I'm just boring, there's nothing special about me, she'll help us to find it again by reminding us that we all have like a coding, like a blueprint of the way, like an architect will make a building, they'll make the blueprint and they'll have this design. Excuse me. Well, this coding for a flower is in the seeds. So before it even becomes a flower, that coding is there in that single seed. That whole life comes from this tiny, weeny little seed that's sometimes smaller than a pin drop. All that potential, all that beauty, all that, the plan and the structure, everything comes from that tiny little seed. We're the same. So if we look at the seed time of ourself, which is our childhood, that's where we can find the keys and the codes and the blueprint, I think, of our authenticity. So why we here, what we meant to do, what is unique about us. So if any of you are kind of thinking like, I don't know why I'm special, I don't know why I'm here, what's wonderful about me, what am I meant to do? I would look back to your childhood and look at the things that really made you happy then, that made you fulfilled, perhaps the hobbies you had, or maybe the eccentricities, the things that maybe, your parents are like, wow, that's a little bit odd, or maybe you just, before you had all these judgments and conditions and limitations that were put on you as you were growing up. Like I remember when I was a child that I used to love like creating scenes, with we had a particular fireplace in our house that had lots of different levels, and they were all different rooms, and there were different creatures living in there. The Barbie dolls would have like a whole life and a whole story inside those areas. And I love to tell the stories. And that brought me real joy, was to create stories, to create kind of these worlds. And obviously that's eventually I can see how that has been fulfilled in me by being a writer, about creating these ideas, this creativity, this thing that I had to fulfilling me, but it took me a while to kind of like find a way to express that, to give that part of my child self permission to play in the adult world, in this adult world where we're told, things have to be very certain, very linear, very, very, strict within these rules and regulations that, you can't think out of the box. And I think we spend a lot of time, we can go from the childhood and we're spending a lot of time trying to work out how to fit our childhood joys into this adult world that tells it that, no, you can't plant that seed here, you know. And so we have to eventually, I think, kind of go back to those seeds that were in our childhood, validate them, acknowledge them, embrace them again, and then create the garden, the pot, the compost where that can then thrive again, and nurture it and allow it to grow now in this moment, so we can have that fulfillment. I'm going to go off in a coughing fit again.
Oh, do you hear that, Reg? But yeah, yes, you're touching on some really important things there, and it's almost like as we grow older, as we become more and more adult, we make ourselves more. We said we can't really disconnect from nature, but we do sort of like our focus is elsewhere, and we almost complicate our lives. We said we become more linear. We take the magic and the joy out of our experience of the world around us because we are taught to focus on this linear construct where we need to succeed, or we have these benchmarks that we are expected, who by is usually society or our parents or our upbringing, that we need to meet. And for a lot of us, we don't fit into this neat little box. And as you keep saying, it's like coming back and remembering where we found joy in our childhood. And it could be simple things. I find that you mentioned washing the dishes. I have a bird bath out my kitchen window, and watching the different levels, or should I say the pecking order of the birds as they come down and use the bird bath is probably a very joyful experience for me while I'm doing something very mundane, but it's also connecting or reminding me that I am also, as you said, part of nature as well. And I think too, getting out in nature, reminding us that we aren't separate of it, that it is part of us, can help us come back to our authentic self and what that actually means. Because I know it sort of gets hijacked a little bit, especially in online communities, as to what authenticity is. You can only be authentic if you join up on and pay lots of money for this course. And it's just like, well, no, it's coming back, finding out who makes you tick inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So you are a flower essence coach, and through the work in this area is helping people to connect in with these higher vibrations of the plant, of the certain flowers around us. And our one of the wonderful flowers, and you did mention it briefly, the sunflower, is
Mm.
the gift that you are offering to everybody who's watching this. And this is a journey to the sunflower essence for confidence. So can I ask why, was there a reason as to why you specifically chose the sunflower, especially for this event, which is for women, for International Women's Day, for Awakening the Feminine Divine? And can you tell us a little bit more about the journey and why the sunflower is connected specifically with confidence?
Yeah, definitely. So, like I said, every flower has its own unique codes, its own unique medicine, and the sunflower is very much about confidence. Also, slightly connected to courage. They are different things, Um, I always felt that I was more courageous than confident, as in that, courage means you just do it anyway. Confidence means that you're happy doing it. Um, Sunflower is the one that kind of came forward that I felt like, was really resonant for this event, that was kind of most needed now, about having this self-confidence. And it's about that journey, as I was saying, of authenticity. So that kind of self-acceptance, going to the self-adoration and then going to the self-devotion. It's kind of bringing this radiance through. So the way that flower essences work is it's not like you need to kind of do you don't need to do anything. It's not like, when the doctor gives you a pill, he says take it 5 times a day. With the flower essences, they meet us soul to soul. So they're going to meet the places in our soul that are, with sunflower particularly, that are not feeling confident, or the places that need confidence. The soul of the sunflower will meet you at that place and will hold it and help you to hold it, so that you can meet those places as well. So confidence isn't kind of like, sometimes they kind of talk about it in the coaching industry, like it is like putting on a jacket and you're going out and you're strutting your stuff. It's deeper than that. It's about having trust, about trusting yourself. And this comes again to the authenticity, about trusting that you are perfectly made, that you are meant to be the way you are meant to be. It's having confidence in yourself, not just being confident, but having that confidence in yourself, trusting yourself. And when you trust yourself, you're like, this is what I've been given, and this is a gift, and this is what I'm meant to be like, this is what I'm meant to do. Then you can trust it. Then you can say, okay, this is what I've got, I'm going to make the best of it. If you think about why you have all this, it's not like, someone's been, like God has made someone short, just to be mean to them so they can never reach the top shelves. There's going to be a way that contributes to your journey in this life, and we can be confident in that. Once we are reminded that you're like that for a reason, you can have confidence in that. So sunflower in particular, you think about how tall it reaches. It's bold and it's big and it's colorful, and it just is displaying that. So it's going to invite you to get big and bold with your authenticity, about letting go of shame, because shame is the opposite of confidence. So often that's the place that it's going to meet when it comes into your soul. It's going to meet those places that perhaps are feeling ashamed for whatever reason, of that shame of a certain part of your body, a shame of the way that you sound, or shame of who you were in the past, or past experiences, or shame of whatever. It has so many different manifestations. This journey, I hope, is going to help you kind of unravel some of that shame, to let go of that, because there's no reason for you to feel like that, because you are perfect, you are absolutely stunningly amazing. Like you are needed, absolutely needed exactly the way that you are. You can never be replicated. You never will be replicated. You will never occur ever, ever again. This is the only time where you, as you, will exist in the whole of existence. And that's an opportunity, and an opportunity that doesn't want to be missed. You know, everything that you can do can never be done again. So if you don't do it, it won't get done. So we need to let go of that shame, because that's only going to keep us small. It's going to stop us um, fitting in that jigsaw piece. And, over Christmas, I had this 1,500 piece jigsaw, and it took me ages, and it was driving me absolutely crazy. And I got right to the end, and there was one piece missing, and I could not find it anywhere. It just didn't exist, and it wasn't complete. It wasn't full. I couldn't finish it, and it just wasn't right. There was something just it. I knew it would never be finished, and the same is the case if you don't live authentically. Nobody else can do that. You have to do it. You are needed. You are wanted. You're here for a reason, on purpose. So fill that gap, because otherwise there'll always be a gap. And that gap needs to be filled to make that jigsaw complete. So hopefully the journey with sunflower will your journey with some of this, and it'll help to bring you to a place where you're feeling a little bit more confident, or hopefully a lot of confidence in yourself, because you deserve that.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something very important, that there's an external confidence, and I know in some areas, especially self-empowerment areas, they say fake it until you make it. But if it doesn't resonate with you, then you're always going to feel less than. And this is probably why a lot of us have been actually been feeling less than, because we've been trying to put on and be this person which isn't authentic to us. And we're talking about, as you said, deeper levels, like soul levels. And we know, we know when we're not being authentic. We know when we're not doing things that completely align with our ethics, our morals, our own sort of soul worth. And
Mm.
and then it's needing that sort of belief in ourselves to stand up, say no, to do our own thing. And so this is when you mentioned that you wanted to do the journey with the sunflower for confidence. I was very excited, okay, because we can all get into that sort of place where we need a deeper level or a deeper push to say, hey, yeah, you're fantastic doing this, but you're not 100% happy or complete. So here's the confidence to step into something that will actually make you complete. And I think that's what really our journey here on this earth plane is all about, is to waken up and to be more authentic, as you've been talking about.
Yeah.
So, Rachel, unfortunately, we are running out of time. So, I would like to first start off by saying thank you very much for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, about how we can come back to our authentic self. As I said, I'm aware that you're recovering from being sick, so this is could be a little bit taxing for you, but it's been fantastic. Thank you very much for showing up and sharing your wisdom with us. Is there anything else you would like to sort of share with everybody who's watching this? Where can people reach out to you if they want to learn more about Wolves, your books, anything else? Because I know you do events throughout the year, both in person and also online. So how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, so I'm actually based in North Wales, United Kingdom. So probably the in person. I would love to go to Australia. I would love to go anywhere in the world. So invite me to your house. But otherwise, if we can't have a house party, then online, come find me on my website, which is Wolf Woman Rising. Just look for Wolf Woman Rising everywhere. I use kind of that saying, that's my wisdom school. That's kind of where you'll find me at. So I'm mostly on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, a Facebook group. You can find the links to my website. Like I said, just look for Wolf Woman Rising. If you want, meditations more about the goddesses and stuff, then that would be YouTube. Behind the scenes, me getting frustrated at jigsaws would be on Instagram. And of course, my books. So there's a whole book about flora and flower wisdom and medicine coming out late autumn this year, and books about Lupa and wolf wisdom are already out. So yeah, do you dive into that, and they're a good introduction.
Yes, thank you for that. And of course, the links to Rachel's website is below this recording on her speaker page when you sign up for the event, which is for free. So once again, thank you very much for your time, Rachel, and for all the wisdom that you have shared with us, and the inspiring us to maybe look at our plants a little bit differently and to reconnect back to our soul essence, which is in alignment with nature. And for everybody who is watching this, Natalia, thank you very much for sharing this wonderful opportunity to listen to Rachel Roberts with me. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Blessings.
Thank you.